Big day in the shop. Today I am going to shorten up the frame on my pickup truck. First, a disclaimer before we get started. I want you to know that this is a how I do, not a how-to. I am part of the 2% of the population that doesn't get things right the first time I do them every time. I did run into issues on this frame job, so if you're using it to gain a little knowledge on how you should do your frame job, I suggest you watch till the end. For those of you that don't know, this is a 2002 Ford Ranger frame and a 1987 body, and I need to shorten this frame up. It will need to be shortened up right here in this area because the issue I'm going to have is the bed and the cab are going to be too far apart. I'm going to get this truck bed out of this corner. It's been sitting here probably a year or two, who knows how long, and we'll set it on the frame and just see what it looks like. So there it is, a 2002 frame and an 87 body. And it really is fitting really nice. The cab will bolt right up, basically. The bed will bolt right up, basically. May need some minor adjustments, but things are looking good. And the issue, as I said earlier, is that gap right there. We need to get rid of that, and 3 inches should take care of it. For your viewing pleasure, there is a little glimpse at the engine, which is also a 2002, and this side of the body, which is all the same color. Isn't that nice? Look at that. What a pretty truck. Obviously, I'm going to measure the frame, but just for fun, I'm going to measure it right now. That's 4 inches. This beautiful Ranger is still all put together. I'm most likely going to use this cab, I think, in the end. 1 inch of gap. So 3 inches got to be removed. All the lines, gas tank, everything out of the way. And these sections here are 2 7/8 of an inch wide, equal sections, equal squares. What's going to happen is I'm going to cut this section out and this section out. The reason I chose those is because they're the straightest part on the frame. So when this comes together, it should fit nicely. Basically what we have is this right here and this right here. So when we eliminate this and this, the frame should come together like that. And then I'll cook it together with the welder and we'll see what it looks like. But before we do that, I'm going to take one more step. And one of the steps I'm going to take is I'm going to take a measurement from here to the floor, just to make sure it's right that way, and then I'll take a crisscross measurement across the frame just to keep it square. The back wheels are all chopped up where they can't move. Now I'm going to take a measurement right here in the very center because that's where everything's going to meet together from the floor up, and I'll go straight with that line and I'll record that measurement on both sides. When I took this measurement from the floor up to the frame, both sides were a little bit different, so I just adjusted the air pressure in the tire to make them the same, and I put a piece of tape on the floor there so I could measure in the same exact spot when I go to put it back together. I just thought it'd be easier than having 2 different measurements on each side, have them the same so I don't get confused. What I've done now is I cut these 2 slits on the top and came down to the bottom of this spot right here. And I'm going to put a piece of angle iron here. I'm going to weld it on the frame temporarily. And one here temporarily, and I'll leave just a little bit of a gap away from the edge. And then I have this other piece, and I'll be able to slide this in from this side in like that. So this is what it looks like. It'll just help hold it together, see? When I go to squeeze it together, this should help keep things in line. Little weight on her. Might have to get a jack in the center. Time now to squeeze it together. It's all prepped and ready to go. I grinded these edges all at an angle. That way I'll have a V shape to fill in when I weld. So far so good. It went together real easy. There is quite the gap there, which I'm not too concerned of. I got to still adjust the height here, and that could be off. That could be causing that gap right there, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to take my measurements to square it up again. All of my measurements I'm going to take now, and then I'm going to hopefully cook this thing together. Here is my first pass. I'll get you a nice close-up view so that all the welding YouTube inspectors can criticize my weld, my job. Anyways, I'm going to finish welding it up, get rid of that bracing, weld it all up, grind it up nice and clean, and we'll move on to the next step. I've been cleaning my welds up, and I welded the back side, so I thought now is a good time to show you what I'm going to do next. This truck is going to have so much horsepower that it does twist the frame either way. There's no way to prevent that. I'm going to do my best to make it not twist in the spot that I repaired. Two pretty holes drilled. Now the plate will slip behind here like so, and we'll weld her in there. I wish on the other side I had drilled the holes, both of them, in the plate and welded it from the back side instead of drilling in the frame. But I didn't, and it's over with and it's fine. But this side, what I decided to do was drill a hole up here in the plate. The plate, of course, is going to go on the back side. But then this side already has existing holes here and they're not being used. So I'm going to drill this hole out bigger and weld it from this side, this hole, and this hole on the inside of the frame. This is what the back side looks like. So this is the outer side, and you can see I gobbed up a bunch of weld on both sides on the circles because I want to grind it flat and it'll be filled in that way. Not necessary, just something I'm wanting to do. So now I'm going to clean it all up. This is a view of the back side, and it's as far as I'm going to go with it. As far as I'm concerned, this is ready to be painted. This side, on the other hand, still needs some work, and so does the other outside, because it has these little pits in it. See, had I been a better welder, it wouldn't have those little pits in it, but it does have them because I'm not a perfect welder. So I'm going to fill them in with some all metal and call it good. I could fill them in with weld and grind it down and fill it in and grind it down, but I don't want inconsistencies in the metal like that. This is what I'm using. It's a two-part thing, and I'm not for it or against it. I just happen to have it, and this is what I'm going to use. I suppose you're supposed to fold it. Is that right? When you do stuff like this, you fold it. This is the right side of the frame completed. This is the side with the two holes drilled in it that I welded up here on the outside. And as you can see, it's not bad, but I'm not really happy with the finished work. It's just too cold to be fooling with that kind of stuff right now for me. I don't have heat in the shop, so I'm going to get back to it later. The whole frame needs to be painted anyways. There's a view of the other side, the inside of the frame. This is the left side, and this is the side that I drilled the one hole in the frame and one in the plate. And I did leave these holes because stuff goes through them, so I drilled them back out. And this is how it looks, nearly finished. And again, I'm not thrilled with it, but it's okay. This is the other side now with the frame on the inside. Time to try and put the cab back on and the bed back on. And hopefully we got about an inch gap between them when it's said and done. Well, that has to be a good sign. This lined up, and I had that frame moved in and out so many times because every night I'd move it to put my stuff back in, and this cab lined just straight up. I just lowered it down on the frame. Amazing. So there it is, the prettiest truck I've ever owned, the nicest truck I've ever owned in my life. And it's fitting good. I don't have it bolted down, but the holes are all lined up and it's looking good. Here is our gap that I was concerned about, and it needed to be an inch space, and that's what we have. Oh, sorry about that. An inch will go right there. You can see you got an inch gap, just like it's supposed to be, and it's nice and even all the way up through there. It really does look good. I like the way this truck looks. And it's taller, a little bit taller because of the 15-inch wheels and tires on it from the newer frame. And if you ask me, it's sitting just nearly perfect. The back may need to be lowered just a hair, you know, someday. And here's the other side, and it looks good too. Everything worked out really well, in my opinion. A nice clean gap there all the way down through it. At this point, I could have ended the video and said everything just worked out wonderfully. The experts out there would have already had plenty to pick apart. The very rank amateurs would have thought it was great. But that is not how the one and only infamous Kentucky Yankee rolls. I'm going to give you the rest of the story. So after looking this truck over and over and over again, I noticed that the right rear corner was a little bit high. I also noticed the gap I thought was perfect on the right side wasn't quite perfect. Because I don't have a frame rack, I had to home make one, and I got it all straightened up. And believe it or not, after doing this, it's really square, it's really level, everything's looking great on this old truck. I feel like I dodged a bullet because the right side was a little high, and that's the only issue I had. I checked it to make sure it was square, and this frame is square, just the right rear was a little bit high. 5/8 of an inch to be precise on the very back. And I will explain the reason that happened and how you can avoid it. I don't know what I was thinking. I was going off the tires. You can't do that because of your suspension. Your suspension could be high or low, so that was a foolish mistake. Secondly, the frame just needed to be leveled. So this frame is perfectly leveled now in this spot, in the middle here, and then on the very back. And how do I know that? Because the floor is not level. It's because I put a level on the floor and leveled the level, and then I can put one on the frame to see if it's level, and then I can measure the distance from the frame down to that level. That's how I finally fixed the back, is all those measurements. That spot is perfectly level right there, right with the bucket. There is pressure going straight down onto that bar. And then I came over here, I took the tire and wheel off because you got to bend it past where you want to go. Otherwise it's just going to spring back. It's always going to spring back some. And then I made sure the level on the floor was level. And then I have this bottle jack. This is just a piece of beam going across my loader. And when I jack the jack, of course, it pushes the frame down. And then I use this level, because everything else is level, to know when the frame was leveled side to side. And then I took a measurement from the level on the floor up to the frame. And now I know everything is nice and square and straight and level. And I'm very pleased, because this could have been a catastrophe. And I'll show you my biggest issue and where I screwed up the most. So other than not properly leveling my frame like I showed you, another thing you need to do is measure as far a distance as you can from one end to the other. That'll give you a more accurate reading. So that was a mistake on my part. I got lucky and was able to square it up properly at a shorter distance, which is just dumb luck. If you can go from one very end of the frame to the very other tip of the frame, that's your best measurement. So when I did the up and down height, I measured it right next to each other, right where I was putting it together. And that's kind of foolish because if it's off just a hair, it's going to be off 10 hairs at the end of the line here. So I should have measured it after it was all leveled up on the floor, somewhere right here at this spot where it's put together, you know, a good clear spot where it's put together. Measured it here and here on both sides, make sure they were the same, and then measured it on the very back and made sure they were the same. So then if you're just off a fuzz, like I said, if you're just off a little bit, it's going to show up back there like it did with me on this project. I'm not really thrilled about showing you folks my mistake, but I'm assuming there's a lot of you out there like me who just like to have fun doing different projects and you're not professionals. Just because you're not a professional, don't let it stop you from doing stuff like this. This is still fun for me. I'm having a great time. And guess what? If the frame was completely ruined and trashed, this truck cost me 150 bucks. I'll find another one, try it again. Don't get discouraged. This is how you learn. And I am happy with it now that everything is straightened up. I'm going to lower the body and put the bed back on and we'll take a look at it. All back together and everything looks good. So if you're wondering how I noticed, it's just because I was looking at it closer, checking out my job, and the right side, when I looked at it from the back here, was higher than the left, and it was that much higher that I could see it real clearly, and just got to making some other measurements, and that's how I figured it out. And then we straightened the frame up, and now here we are. I'm going to call this a success. I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out. Stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more videos on this truck. Next step, I think, is to get the wiring harness out of the old cab and get it onto this cab so that we can start it up and get it running. I'm wanting to use the air conditioning box, all that kind of stuff off of that cab on this truck, even the power windows and locks, all that. Every day I work on this old truck is one day closer to getting a turbocharger on it and burning a new set of tires off of it. Our donor vehicle with the wiring harness, air conditioning box, and all that crap right here. Boy, she's a beauty, ain't she, guys? Look at that thing.